this National Reconciliation Week.
Wherever you are in Australia, we acknowledge the traditional owners of the land.
I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I stand.
I pay respects to the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation.
The Bundjalung Nation, the land on which I stand.
The Gadigal people.
The Gimli Nation.
I acknowledge the people of the Kulin Nation and pay my respects.
The WADRCN people of the Noongar Nation on whose land we're standing.
To the Darawal people of this country, south of Sydney.
I pay my respects to the Larrakia Nation.
The Moina people of Tawita or Tasmania.
And eastern and central Arunai in Central Australia.
The First Nations people of this area.
From the rainforest to the reef.
Where sovereignty was never ceded.
And even though it's different to where my ancestors are from, it very much feels like home.
And I pay my respects to the elders, both past and present.
And still to come.
And I recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture.
And thank you for allowing me to live and work here in your place.
In this together.
I acknowledge the First Nations people on whose country we meet today, the Wadandi people of the Noongar Nation, and I show my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol has as its central character Ebenezer Scrooge. He's portrayed as a very mean, nasty individual who is very focused on making money and screwing over everyone in the process. The story centres on Ebenezer Scrooge's supernatural encounter with the ghost of his former business partner Jacob Marley and the spirits of the Christmas past, present and future. An encounter that confronts Ebenezer with what his life has been in the past, what it is like in the present, and what it will be like in the future if he keeps going in the course that he's been headed. Once confronted with the realities of what a life centred on money is, he decides to change. The transformation is miraculous. Instead of being a mean, nasty individual, he becomes a generous, compassionate and caring soul. Ebenezer is no random choice of a name by Dickens. The biblical origins of the word in Hebrew means stone of help. The Ebenezer reminded the Israelites of God's power and protection. When Samuel erected the Ebenezer, it was after their natural enemy had been routed, and the Israelites honoured God for blessing and protecting them. Ebenezer is a good metaphor for the West Australian Disaster Recovery Chaplaincy Network. Our mission is to help churches help communities following disaster. I did not come to this metaphor by accident. When I was an Army chaplain, I was deployed with the Special Forces Task Group positioned near the western border of Iraq in the Second Gulf War, with the mission to deny the enemy forces of the ability to mount an attack from that region of the country. At our forward operating base was a group of US Special Forces gunships, and the head of the US command was a committed Christian who was very supportive of chaplains. His own chaplain became a very good friend of mine. He and his team of chaplains built Ebenezers at the flight line of these aircraft and prayed for the safety and protection of the crews who were tasked with deadly missions against enemy forces. That experience gave me the insight to adopt the Ebenezer as a metaphor to describe what our mission is in disaster recovery, to help churches help communities following disaster. The Disaster Recovery Chaplaincy Network in Australia has a long history. It has been in the making for over 40 years. It had its beginnings in Victoria. That story can be told succinctly by its immediate past manager, Stuart Stewart.
When disaster strikes, we're there. We're there supporting people affected by emergencies. In the darkest hour, we're there standing beside those people whose lives have been touched by crisis. But we don't stop there.
The VCC Emergencies Ministry has been supporting the community since 1977. We respond at the time of an emergency. We support people to reconnect with their loved ones, their friends, their community, offering psychological first aid and emotional and spiritual care. Faith and culture are important considerations after the initial disaster has receded and the long journey of seeking understanding and personal healing begins. We also continue to serve in the aftermath of crisis, through the long, difficult and often lonely days and months of suffering. We spend time with those who have been touched by grief, stress and trauma. Our care extends to all people in all communities. Today, we have a network of over 1,700 trained volunteers representing most religions and cultures. We are dedicated, compassionate, strong and dependable. We are committed to being present, to lending a hand, to caring and providing hope for those in need.
To find out more about volunteering or other ways of supporting, please go to vccem.org.au. Compassion in times of crisis.
Our history in WA is very recent, and it came about principally by a meeting between myself and your General Secretary, Simone Mickey. Simone must be credited with developing this network almost single-handedly. Before my meeting with Simone, I was scratching my head to know what to do about our service, which till then had been nested in the Uniting Church in Australia Synod of WA. Our denomination has suffered incredible reversals of membership over the past decade since union, with a diminishing presence in the WA communities and a diminishing number of ministry agents. Something needed to be done to build capacity and capability. That's when Simone came in on the scene. Simone caught the vision and became quite excited about the possibilities. I too could see that a partnership with other denominations would mean that the majority of the communities in our vast state could potentially have support in times of disaster and emergency from our churches. In 2019, the West Australian Disaster Recovery Chaplaincy Network came into being with a statewide training program delivered by the Reverend Dr. Stephen Robinson, the Uniting Church in Australia's National Disaster Recovery Officer. We now have over 70 trained disaster recovery chaplains, with the hope of upskilling others in the next few years. A decision was taken to include lay as well as ordained ministry in our chaplaincy capability from the experience of our senior network after the tragic Black Saturday bushfires in Victoria. Clearly, we need your help to spread the news and help recruit others into this very worthwhile ministry. Two recent developments make this even more imperative to recruit. A Memorandum of Understanding has been signed between the Council of Churches of WA, the Uniting Church in Australia Synod of WA, and the Department of Fire and Emergency Services for WADRCN to provide chaplaincy support to the Department of Fire and Emergency Services first responders in the event of a declared disaster. The other development has occurred in the aftermath of the Perth Hills fire and the cyclone that struck the midwest of WA, Tropical Cyclone Seroja. The WADRCN and the Uniting Church Synod of WA have partnered in providing the first disaster recovery chaplain to support the communities of Gidgegannup and Wooroloo. And you will be hearing firsthand from Amy Lee Steele about her experiences in these communities as our first disaster recovery chaplain. One of our trained WADRCN chaplains provided support to a little community in the Midwest, providing support to a couple of school communities for a period of time. It is now my pleasure to invite Amy Lee to share with you some of the insights she has gained since commencing her work as a disaster recovery chaplain. Amy Lee's commitment and dedication to this work is exemplary, and she has gained a remarkably positive reputation within the community for her dedication and commitment to the role. Please welcome Amy Lee.